24시간 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Coming up on Arirang News. Having met for the first time in more than 4 years, leaders from South Korea, Japan, and China agreed to restore trilateral cooperation in key fields, ranging from regional security to people-to-people exchanges and trade. Coinciding with the Trilateral Summit, North Korea announces its plan to launch another rocket, likely carrying its military spy satellite as soon as today or at any time until early next week. South Korea's music competition for college students, which has often been the gateway to fame for aspiring young singers, has been brought back after 12 years by the 2024 Hangang Campus Song Festival. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with South Korea, Japan, and China holding their first three-way summit since December 2019. They agreed to restore and expand trilateral cooperation in many areas, ranging from people-to-people exchanges to the economy. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon leads us off.
Fully restoring and normalizing relations was a key goal for this 9th trilateral summit between South Korea, Japan, and China, which resumed after 4 years and 5 months. And on Monday, President Yoon, as the host of the summit, says it did just that.
오늘을 기점으로 3국 정상회의는 정상화되었고 올해로 25주년을 맞이한 한일-중 협력 체제가 앞으로 더욱 성장해 나갈 수 있는 발판이 마련되었습니다.
They also acknowledged that they share some of the key issues such as aging demographics and supply chain disruptions, and by working together, they can resolve them.
Since the last trilateral summit, the international community has faced diverse, complex and interconnected problems. Additionally, there are significant common issues among our three countries, such as low birth rates and aging populations.
We agree that in the face of new challenges and opportunities, South Korea-China-Japan cooperation must demonstrate new responsibilities and actions.
The summit comes after months of efforts by South Korea to make it happen. And President Yoon, on top of normalization of the relations, has emphasized tangible results for the citizens. In fact, the joint declaration the three adopted laid out the resumption of many dialogues between the three parties on top of specific actions they will take going forward. There were 6 main parts: civilian exchanges, climate change, the economy, public health, science, and disaster relief. Some tangible results were announced through the declaration. For the people-to-people exchange, the three will designate 2025 to 2026 as the year of cultural exchange among the three countries. For climate change response, they will collaborate with Mongolia to reduce dust and sandstorms in East Asia. And in terms of the economic and trade aspect, they will continue discussions to speed up trilateral FTA negotiations. In terms of public health and aging societies, the three will tackle future infectious diseases, and they adopted a separate joint statement on this. For science and tech cooperation, the three will resume the Trilateral Science and Technology Ministers meeting.
이번 회의에서 채택된 공동 선언은 우리 3국이 민생 증진과 영내 평화와 번영을 위해 긴밀히 협력하겠다는 의지를 담고 있습니다.
Next up as the host is Japan, and the leaders agreed that they look forward to the 10th summit without notifying when it will take place. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The Trilateral Summit also touched upon peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. The three leaders agreed to make positive contributions, but were short of detail when it came to addressing more sensitive issues. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young explains.
Seoul, Tokyo and Beijing agreed to make positive efforts towards a political solution for a stable Korean Peninsula as a common interest and responsibility, but appear to maintain their differences on the finer details. On Monday, President Yoon, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and Chinese Premier Li Qiang released a joint declaration following their Trilateral summit in Seoul. Amid the regional security crisis posed by North Korea's nuclear and missile program, the three leaders reaffirmed their support for peace, stability and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula. However, the three leaders reiterated their positions on denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and the issue of abductees. South Korea and Japan have been pushing for the denuclearization of North Korea in particular, and the release of their nationals held hostage by Pyongyang. However, China has held a different view on the approach to denuclearization and remains mum on human rights issues related to North Korea. Speaking at a joint press conference, Yoon called for active cooperation between the three countries.
한일 중 3국 공통의 핵심 이익인 영내 평화와 안정을 보장하기 위해서는 궁극적으로 자유롭고 평화로운 통일 한반도를 실현한다는 목표 아래 유엔 안보리 결의를 충실히 이행하면서 북한의 비핵화를 위해 노력하는 것이 중요합니다.
Addressing North Korea's plans to launch a spy satellite by early next week, Yoon said the act would be a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions, and the international community must respond sternly. The Japanese PM also voiced his concerns.
If North Korea proceeds with the launch of a satellite, it would be a violation of the UN Security Council resolution, and I strongly urge that they halt such a plan.
He added that the denuclearization of North Korea and the stability of the Korean Peninsula are in the common interest of Seoul, Tokyo and Beijing. However, the Chinese premier refrained from criticizing Pyongyang and did not mention denuclearization.
I believe that the parties involved must maintain restraint and prevent the situation from getting worse and more complicated.
In a separate meeting with Li Qiang on Monday, Yoon requested China to play a constructive role regarding North Korea, emphasizing its duty to uphold the global nuclear non-proliferation system as a permanent member of the UN Security Council. According to spokesperson Kim Soo-kyung, the South Korean leader also asked for cooperation on the issue of North Korean defectors. China has routinely deported North Koreans back to their homeland, where they face serious consequences for attempting to defect. In response, Lee said he is well aware of Korea's concerns and that he will continue to communicate in the future. Yoon, during their bilateral meeting the previous day, similarly pressed for China's cooperation amid North Korea's weapons exchanges with Russia. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And a separate business summit involving the leaders and business heads from South Korea, Japan, and China has set the tone for strengthening economic cooperation, such as further developing trade partnerships. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
As neighboring countries, South Korea, Japan, and China's economies are closely linked, celebrating 25 years of trilateral cooperation this year. At the 8th edition of a business summit on Monday afternoon in Seoul, the leaders and 240 business heads came together to discuss a wide range of regional topics. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida remarked on the common challenges the countries face, such as aging populations, while Chinese Premier Li Qiang spoke of deepening industrial cooperation as Beijing looks to stabilize its supply chain network. President Yoon commented on the need for the neighbors to respond to global issues together, as well as further developing trade agreements.
3국 간 교역 투자 플랫폼인 RCEP의 활용도를 높이는 동시에 2019년 이후 중단된 한일 중 FTA 협상을 조속히 재개하여 경제 협력 기반을 업그레이드해야 합니다.
Accounting for nearly a quarter of the world's GDP, the three countries have attempted to facilitate easier trading in the past. Negotiations on a free trade agreement began in 2012, with 16 rounds of talks since then. FTAs abolished tariffs and barriers, but progress on a trilateral agreement has been slow for a variety of reasons. The last negotiations were in 2019, and factors including COVID-19 and Beijing-Washington tensions have hindered progress. Other economic partnerships such as the China-led CPTPP and Japan-led RCEP have also diverted attention away from the Trilateral FTA. However, economic relations between Seoul and Tokyo have improved, with resumed finance leader talks last year ending a 7-year hiatus. But Japan falls behind the likes of the United States and China when it comes to South Korea's exports, and an expert explains why FTA negotiations between the two have been slow, and what Seoul is attempting to achieve through a free trade agreement with Tokyo.
Even though Korean products are pretty good and less expensive, they are sticking to their own product. So main target of Korean, government and Korean corporations are, penetrating into Japanese market.
As for trade relations with China, it was formerly the country's biggest destination for exports before the US took over. Data from the Bank of Korea show that the value of outbound shipments to the US overtook those to China for the first time in 21 years in the first quarter of this year. But the Sino-Korean FTA that was set in motion to cover goods trade could now be expanded to the services sector to include tourism and culture.
The expansion of free trade agreements in other areas like services and investment, and the interaction of people that are most important, and that is in the traditional kind of interest of free trade agreements. So I think it is a necessary and a natural process of development.
With these negotiations between Seoul and Beijing scheduled for next month, and Yoon's urging to resume FTA talks, attempts to strengthen economic ties are definitely underway. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Coinciding with the Trilateral summit, North Korea announces its plan to launch another rocket, likely carrying its military spy satellite, as soon as today or at any time until early next week. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jong-sil reports.
Another satellite launch warning by North Korea was issued early on Monday. Japan's Coast Guard received an email from the North that it plans to launch an artificial satellite between Monday and June 4th. Pyongyang also gave notice of 3 locations of potential danger following the launch. The projectile will likely fall in one of 3 places, 2 of which are in the southwestern area of the West Sea and 1 in the Pacific Ocean east of the Philippines. Here's what a South Korean military spokesperson had to say about the announcement.
North Korea's launch of a military reconnaissance satellite is a provocative act that violates UN Security Council resolutions. Our military will take measures to demonstrate its strong capabilities. South Korea, the US, and Japan are working together in the case of the launch, and South Korea and the US are closely monitoring North Korea's moves.
The Ministry of Unification also told reporters on Monday such a satellite launch is a clear violation of a UN Security Council resolution that bans all missile launches using ballistic missile technologies. The ministry demanded that Pyongyang immediately halt its illegal satellite launch plans. North Korea previously launched a satellite back in November, which successfully entered orbit after failures in May and August. South Korean intelligence authorities said Pyongyang got help from Russia after the November launch. On Sunday, Yonhap News reported citing a senior defense official that a large number of Russian experts have entered the north to support its satellite launch efforts, saying a launch could be imminent ahead of the Trilateral summit between Seoul, Tokyo, and Beijing. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
South Korea's military staged air drills near the inter-Korean border on Monday in response to North Korea's announcement of its planned military reconnaissance satellite launch. The Joint Chiefs of Staff said around 20 fighter jets, including the F-35A and F-15K fighters, took part in strike and attack training, hours after the regime notified Japan of its plan to launch its second spy satellite sometime between Monday and June 4th. The military explained that the drills were conducted to demonstrate South Korea's will and ability to retaliate immediately, strongly, and until the end upon the enemy's provocation. Now shifting gears. As the government finalizes the medical school enrollment quota for next year, the medical community has overridden its own decision to take 1 weekday off per week. The Emergency Committee of the Medical Professor Association of Korea reversed its decision on Monday, which had been calling for a re-examination of the medical school enrollment quota. The doctors say they're hopeful for what the court's final verdict might be. Once the schools announce their quota this week, it may become difficult to make changes. The Korean Medical Association has pledged to hold nationwide candlelight rallies in protest of the government's decision, with the first one set to be held on Thursday. The food price increases in South Korea has exceeded that of disposable income in the first quarter of this year, with the cost of dining out and grocery shopping jumping for 7 consecutive quarters. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Whether it be dining out or grocery shopping, food prices have continued to rise for 7 straight quarters. The latest data released by the Korean Statistical Information Service on Monday, the rate of increase in food prices exceeded the rate of increase in disposable income in the first quarter of this year. The price of dining out rose by 3.8% on year in Q1 of 2024, while the price of processed foods rose 2.2% compared to the same quarter last year. In comparison, the average monthly disposable income of all households in the first quarter of this year was 4,046,000 won, or around $2,960, up only 1.4% compared to the same period last year. Disposable income is money that can be used for consumption or savings after paying interest and taxes. Among a total of 39 restaurant food items on record, the price of hamburgers rose the highest in the first quarter of this year, jumping 6.4%. That was followed by bibimbap at 6.2%, kimbap at 6%, and naengmyeon, or cold noodles, at 5.9%. Among 73 processed foods on record, sugar saw the highest jump in prices at 20.1%, with salt closely behind at 20%. Prices of agricultural products saw further jumps, up 10.4%. In particular, price of apples rose 71.9%, while pears rose 63.1%. The increase in apple prices in the first quarter was the highest on a quarterly basis since related statistics were first compiled in 1975. Unfortunately for consumers, food prices will continue to increase for the time being. Data also showed that the price of dining out and processed foods have been steadily increasing in the second quarter as well. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In the Middle East, an Israeli attack on a refugee camp in Rafah has reportedly killed more than 30 people, hours after Hamas fired rockets towards Tel Aviv. Our Yoon tells us more.
An Israeli airstrike targeting a tent encampment in Rafah killed over 35 Palestinians and wounded many more. According to Gaza officials, the Israeli Air Force bombed shelters in the Tal al-Sultan neighborhood of western Rafah. The camp, where thousands of people who had fled eastern areas were sheltering, was set ablaze in the attack.
All of a sudden, a missile hit us in our neighborhood. All the people are burned. Go and see what happened to them.
Footage showed intense fires and people carrying bodies into emergency vehicles. Most of the victims were reported to be women and children.
We went into the house and did not find anyone. Then we checked over the wall and found a girl and a young man who had been cut into pieces.
The assault on the region, previously designated as a safe zone by the Israeli authorities, comes despite the International Court of Justice calling on Friday for Israel to cease its military operations in the city. According to the Israeli military, earlier on Sunday, rockets were fired from Rafah, targeting central Israel, although no casualties were reported. In regards to striking Rafah, the military said an IDF aircraft struck a Hamas compound, which Hamas terrorists were operating, claiming it took out 2 Hamas officials. It added that the strike was carried out against a legitimate target under international law, but was aware of reports indicating that as a result of the strike and fire that was ignited, several civilians in the area were harmed, and the incident is under review. Intense anger and grief from around the world were expressed to the media following the attack, where people were tragically burned alive in their tents. A UN housing expert condemned the attack, posting on social media, "Attacking women and children in their shelters is a monstrous atrocity, and concerted global action is needed to stop Israel's actions now." Yoon, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea's music competition for college students, which has often been the gateway to fame for aspiring young singers, has been brought back after 12 years by the 2024 Hangang Campus Song Festival. Our Park Gon-woo was there.
Around 20,000 people have gathered at Yeouido Hangang Park in central Seoul. They're here for the 2024 Hangang Campus Song Festival, which aims to revive the popular college song contest that was held for 35 years from 1977 until 2012. College students take part in a singing contest with songs that they wrote themselves.
Because this is being held after a long time, I'm hoping to see participants become singers like 신해철.
The college song contest, widely known as a gateway for singers to make it into the industry, has produced the likes of 신해철 and 심수봉. On Saturday in Yeouido, the participants all had their own musical aims and ambitions.
The time we perform on stage is also another page of our youth. I hope all the young people watching our performance feel happy.
I hope people slowly walk through their life instead of being hasty. That's the message I want to deliver through my song.
At this year's competition, a total of 264 teams auditioned to make it to the finals, and 11 were chosen. The total prize money of around $14,000 was split with 5 teams, while half of the amount went to the final winner. Among the 5 winners, the band named Pentacle won the grand prize.
I was so surprised and thankful because I didn't expect such a big prize. I'm going to spread a lot of hope and kindness to people. With the prize money, I will release Moonlight, the song we showed to you tonight, also with a music video.
Let's go!
Even though the festival lasted for over 2 hours, thousands of people remained in their seats.
As a big fan of music, I hope this event happens every year because I was so happy and touched.
Seoul Mayor Oh Se-hoon attended the event and said he'll do his best to make sure the competition happens next year, even bigger and better. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
This week begins with the cool weather. Daytime temperatures are cooling down as cold air flows after the rain. Until tonight, Jeju Island may receive less than 5 millimeters of light rain. The early summer-like heat will gradually return from tomorrow. It will be cool in the morning, similar to today. Daytime temperatures will be higher than 25 degrees Celsius nationwide. Since it is cool in the morning and evening due to the temperature swings, you'll need to take a jacket with you. Strong winds will continue tomorrow on the southern coast. In particular, strong winds of more than 20 meters per second are expected, with a preliminary strong wind warning issued on the east coast of areas of the Gyeongsang-do provinces. Extra precautions are necessary. Tomorrow, Seoul, Gwangju, Daegu, and Gyeongju will start off at 14 degrees. Highs will be topping out at 26 in Seoul and Gwangju. Skies will be mostly clear for inland areas for the rest of the week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for this newscast tonight. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with the latest news at 9 a.m. tomorrow with New Day at Arirang. Hope everyone has a great start to the week.
Lotte takes a new leap beyond its boundaries. Our change will lead